What's going on, everybody? This is Jerome Moore, host and creator of Deep Dish Conversations. And firstly, I want to say thank you for all love and support, and thank you for exploring the perspectives of social change with me on this platform. I want to encourage you all to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube and on your favorite podcast listen platform. And make sure you give us a 5-star rating if you're loving the Deep Dish Conversations. I appreciate all of the support again. I hope you all enjoy this episode.
This is deep dish, right?
Yeah, well, let's get deep.
So I'm going deep on both sides.
James, welcome to the platform. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Jerome. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today.
And I just want to let you know now, you got one of the most amazing last names.
Man, I've heard that all my life.
Threalkill. You can't get no more amazing than that.
Right, and when people find out that I'm an artist, they think I made it up. They think it's like my stage name or something like that.
You was born with it.
Yes, sir. So imagine first day of school in elementary school when the teacher had everybody stand up and say their names. I already knew it was going to be laughter after I gave my name. And sure enough, stand up, James Threalkill, and all this laughter used to take place.
Well, first off, we believe in giving people their flowers while they're here and while they can smell them. So I want to give you your flowers from one black man to another, from one Nashvilleian to another. You've done you do amazing work. Oh my gosh.
Thank you so much.
And as somebody, who wish
right.
I could do that. It just you gotta appreciate greatness while you see it. And your work is truly great. And so you getting a whole bouquet of flowers right now from me. And thank you for your inspiration. Thank you for what you mean to Nashville, to black folks, to people who come from the same background as you, that, it's possible you can do amazing things. And so I just had to say that so people can hear, but also, more people should say it to you if they don't. Your work is amazing. Thank you for how you represent Nashville.
Well, I appreciate that. It means a lot. And I always appreciate people sharing their reactions to the work that I do. So it's so important. So I appreciate you acknowledging that in that way.
Let's get into Nashville. Growing up in 3 housing projects, walk us through adolescent James and what you learned, who taught you to be who you are. What did you have to learn and navigate growing up real quick in those environments? And I will say, being a person who didn't grow up in housing projects, but had family members who did and visited often, it's a lot of misconceptions about what happens and the joy in the neighboring environment that exists there as well that doesn't get talked about.
Absolutely.
The caretaking that doesn't get talked about, because you can't have all them kids running around and people not be looking out for each other. So I just wanted to put that out there for people as well, because I just want to get away from that narrative that housing projects comes with just harm and danger and crime and all those things, which happens everywhere.
Absolutely.
In any community. But take us through that.
Yeah, and I appreciate you framing it in that particular manner, because with all the travels that I've done worldwide and giving presentations about my art and everything, I begin with where I came from. The fact that I grew up in 3 public housing communities, and the fact that I'm proud of that. And when I was growing up, it started out in J.C. Napier Court in South Nashville. And the public housing communities during those days were places where people took pride in where they lived. Their homes were clean, their yards they took care of, they had little gardens out in front. But the thing is, the neighborhood, you hear that village concept. It was truly a village concept, because you could be 4 or 5 doors down from your house and somebody would chastise you as if you were their own child. And then by the time you got home, would have called your parents and told them that they did it, and that was accepted.
And what era of time is this? So people...
We're talking about the 1960s.
60s, okay. Okay.
Yeah. And it was understood that you had to be on your best behavior because people were watching out for you. And so I attended J.C. Napier Elementary School, named after the prominent prominent African-American attorney. And in the first grade, a teacher, Miss Stinson, she's deceased now, but she contacted my mother and she said, James is drawing in class all day. She said, there's a strong chance this young man is going to be an artist because that's all he's doing. So Mom said, okay, you can draw, but you have to do your schoolwork too. But it alerted her to make sure that I had all the materials and encouragement and everything I needed to realize that it was a special talent. So she enrolled me in classes over at the old Children's Museum over by the Howard School building, where I was taking art classes. And one of the key moments was when I turned 13. I was the oldest of a family of 6. And she took me to buy an oil painting set with money that probably should have gone for other things, you know. But that told me how much she believed in my potential. I had great teachers. My third grade teacher did a school play, and she said different students were going to play different characters. She said, James, I want you to play Henry O. Tanner. Now go find out who he is, and you're going to be that character in the play. So I couldn't get on the internet. I had to go get the encyclopedia and find out who he was. But when I saw him, a black artist who had incredible painting skills, and he painted in a realism style of painting, which influences my style today. But one of his most famous paintings is this black man with a kid on his lap called The Banjo Lesson. He's teaching this kid how to play the banjo. And when I saw that painting, I was mesmerized with the quality and the realism. Now, Henry O. Tanner was an artist who was an exceptional painter, and he would paint different characters, white people, a lot of biblical stories and different things like that. He would enter art shows and win, and then when they found out that he was a black artist, they would disqualify him. So he ultimately had to travel to Europe, where he gained prominent fame, and then the U.S. was ready to accept him. So when I went on that stage in the third grade and said, my name is Henry O. Tanner and I'm an artist, that awakened something in me in terms of the type of paintings that I was attracted to. And so all through school, I knew what I wanted to do career-wise, but, you know, being oldest of 6 in the public housing community, you didn't automatically think that you had an opportunity to go to college. And I was a little scrawny kid, so I wasn't thinking about sports. But back then, there was a street that separated a public housing community on one side, J.C. Napier, and then across the street, it was called University Court. And that's where all the white residents lived. And we called it the White Projects. And you were careful not to get caught across the street over there. Right. I remember one time walking down to the corner where they had some businesses like dry cleaners and a little lounge. And I turned the corner and 4 white guys were walking toward me. Now, I was a little kid and they were bigger. So this one kid had an axe in his pocket, and he looked at me and acted like he was pulling it out of his pocket. Man, I'm talking about chills went down my spine. And so when he did it and he saw the look on my face, he kind of laughed. So I avoided any issues, but you just tended to stay on your side of the neighborhood doing that. But, you know, everybody in the neighborhood were proud people. We were right across the street from Cameron High School. And our role models were those students that attended Cameron High School. Cameron's band used to emulate Tennessee State University, and we couldn't wait to go over there to watch the football team play. Those were our heroes, and one of them grew up across the street from me, across the yard from me, and man, he was our hero in the neighborhood. So we had people that we looked up to, and we aspired to education because of the excellence that those Cameron students were exemplifying. And the same thing was happening with Pearl High School across town and North High School as well. So that was kind of the environment that we were in. One profound lesson that I learned from my mother back then, my mother worked out of the home, and so I had to babysit a lot of times for my siblings. But she came home from work one day and took us to this little dairy dip down on Murfreesboro Road. It would be the equivalent of a Sonic in this day and time. So we pulled in. She ordered our little ice cream boats. And so the guy brought them out to us, and we started eating our ice cream. So the guy turns around and comes back to the car, and he says, ma'am, you all can't park here and eat your ice cream. And she was like, why not? I just bought this. She said, yeah, but you can't stay here and eat this ice cream. My mom started up that car, and as she headed out of the driveway and started driving down the street, without looking, she reached back and grabbed all of our ice cream boats and threw them in the parking lot before she pulled off. One of the most impressive things I ever seen. But we were all screaming and crying like, oh, my ice cream. Didn't understand why she was doing it. But years later, I said she was teaching us a lesson about being respected and not tolerating disrespect. And so that was a valuable lesson to learn from her in that regard. But she was my biggest cheerleader, and she would find out that I hadn't drawn in a period of time and would encourage me to get back on my art, because she said that's an important skill that God gave you, and you do not let it go to waste. And so ultimately, when the elements in the neighborhood started to get precarious, she started looking for another place to move to. And so when, the trouble started and that kind of stuff, then she moved across town to the Edge Hill public housing community.
Okay.
And that's when I entered the 5th grade at Merle School, 6th grade at Carter Lawrence School on the corner. My 6th grade teacher, Mr. Jackie Thomas, he's still around today, was one of the most phenomenal instructors I have ever had. This man taught Black history to us as 6th graders. He taught us algebra, and he made it competitive to the point where we couldn't wait to go to the board against one of our classmates and do the best algebra project. That's how profound he was in his education, but he demanded excellence.
Right.
And so during recess, he would take us outside and play quarterback for both teams. Had one of the best passing arms I ever seen. And when I went to college to play wide receiver, I said, Mr. Thomas, you helped me get a scholarship throwing me all of those passes. And so, again, those neighborhoods were proud communities, and everybody looked out for each other and that type of thing. And so when it was time for me to go to high school, we moved to East Nashville because I couldn't wait to go to Cameron High School.
Right.
And right when I was old enough to go, they had phased the school out because of, I don't know if you heard the story about Cameron was playing Stratford High School down at the Municipal Auditorium. And of course, the refs were giving the Cameron team a hard time. So ultimately, something took place in the restroom with some students, not the athletes, but some students. And a girl came out of the bathroom who looked like she had gotten into a fight. Well, they ultimately, and it's a film about this that's out, that they document this story, but they suspended Cameron for a year.
Wow.
In sports. And so all those seniors who were looking forward to their senior years in sports, and then Stratford got a slap on the wrist, but they punished Cameron.
Right.
And so after a year of not being able to play any sports, Cameron came back and won back-to-back state championships after that with the legendary Ron Lawson as the coach.
Right.
And so after that, the school board said, we ain't having this. So they just shut the school down and built this new school out by the Two Rivers area called McGavick.
Right.
And all those talented students were shipped out of their neighborhood. So that was a big disappointment
Wow.
for a lot of people to lose one of the most prominent high schools in the history of Nashville.
Well, I knew a lot of prominent folks, brilliant people came out of Cameron.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But I didn't know that story where how it ended up not being in school.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you can find that film too. It's a great documentation of what took place and how C.E. Magruder and Avon Williams and all these prominent attorneys tried to advocate for Cameron to not be suspended, and just how the school board just turned a deaf ear to any of the rational arguments that they made about it.
Right.
So, that's why I say I'm proud of my upbringing, because we had great people in the community, and it just helped us to stay on track, back during that time. And so my parents already set the ground rules for what they expected in school. You had to do your schoolwork. I made straight A's, and then the next grading period, I made a B on one of my classes. I took 2 hours to walk home. And my mom said, "What took you so long to get home?" I said, "I made a B." And she said, "Boy, that's great," But it was just, she had established that standard of excellence.
Well, so because I always think about this, and I always talk to my daddy about this. He grew up in North Nashville, went to North,
Yeah.
And then they built White's Creek.
Right.
And then he got 6 other siblings that are much older.
Uh-huh.
So some of them before went to McGavin, went to all.
Right.
The zoning was so weird
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
And then he went to like Jolton for middle school and stuff like that.
Right.
And I always ask him like, man, how was it, just growing up and being black in Nashville during those times?
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to share your journey about this. And he always tell me like, man, like it was everything was just segregated, and we had the best teachers,
Right.
You went to your little shops that was all mom and pop shops that was from your neighbors, and
Absolutely.
it was just some of the best times, and all the other stuff that we hearing a lot, like discrimination, racism, all that stuff, like you really didn't see it, even though it was happening around you as a kid, because everybody around you looked like you, and even though everybody it was desegregation, it was still segregated.
Right.
Here in Nashville, by railroad checks and things like that.
Right.
And so how did seeing Nashville today and growing up in Nashville and reflecting back on those times, what are your thoughts on that change? Do you think that segregation benefited you in having, it's hard to find black teachers, especially black male teachers, and those type of things, where in that era, due to laws and the nature of our country, you had to have black teachers, which my dad was powerful in, and everybody I know that grew up in the era was like, man, like I did not I don't remember not having
Absolutely.
black teachers.
Right.
But now it's that's one of the social constructs that people are trying to figure out, where the majority of teachers, even in black communities, are white women.
Right. Well, the thing is, I feel like our communities were almost duped into thinking that we needed to integrate into another community. Because the thing is, as you mentioned, we had doctors, lawyers, teachers, and in many cases, they all lived in the same community. The 2 houses down was Mr. McKissick's house or Dr. So-and-so's house, and then we patronized our businesses in our community. Jefferson Street was a thriving business district. And of course, as typical with a lot of trends in the country, they split the neighborhood up by bringing the interstate through. So we took pride in our neighborhoods, and we did business with our businesses. People were working, businesses were making money. And so I always remember, Dr. King's statement about it. He felt like at the end of his tenure, he integrated his people into a burning house, because you look at what took place in Tulsa when all those businesses were thriving and we had the Black Wall Street and that kind of thing. And then the jealousy and the hatred just came through and destroyed all of those businesses. I remember my mom telling me the story of Emmett Till when I was a young man, and I just couldn't believe that somebody could do something like that to a 14-year-old kid. But she was trying to tell me about situations that could help me in terms of dealing with circumstances that I might deal with. And so, there was, the discrimination about not being able to get on the bus and have to sit in the back of the bus and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of grew up in that civil rights era where people started protesting, some of the injustices in society. And of course, you had 2 sides of the argument. You had Dr. King's approach, and then you had Malcolm X's approach, where if somebody hit you, you hit them back. And then, of course, the economic development component. So that's what I feel like really disjointed our community. Case in point, the black movie industry, when all of those actors and directors were working, and then they came up with that blaxploitation term, and all of a sudden we stopped doing what was being done by Hollywood. They're talking about gangsters and other movies like that. Well, white Hollywood was making those kind of movies, but when we started doing it, all of a sudden it was something negative. And then especially during a time when HBCUs were the only place that would take black athletes. And, the legendary John Merritt was winning all kind of championships and games like that. And then all of a sudden, the white university saw the benefit of attracting black athletes. There's a famous story about Bear Bryant down in Alabama when they played USC, and Sam the Bam Cunningham ran all up and down the field on the University of Alabama, and that's when Bear Bryant said he's going to get him some black athletes because he knew that was the wave of the future in terms of talent. So, unfortunately, we didn't hold on to our businesses and patronize our businesses, and then we end up letting other people come into our community and set up businesses and then decipher the money out of our neighborhoods. And we tended to not patronize our black businesses the way we should have. That's why, for me, my framing is done by woodcuts out on Jefferson Street, and I try to make a point to make sure that dollars are circulating in our communities, and that's so important. So, you had to kind of weave your way through that period. Of course, the assassination of Malcolm X and Medgar Evers and Dr. King. You saw a lot of people who were, trying to push toward black excellence being eliminated.
Right.
And even with what happened with the Black Panthers and Fred Hampton and all those kinds of things. So I felt like there was an intentional effort to disjoint our community. And we have to continue the effort of trying to rally behind the effort to, build up our own communities, similar to the work that you're doing with the community advocating. But that's so important that we not lose sight of that.
And so another interesting thing before we get into like the meat and potatoes of what you do, and I want to get into how all of those things that you talked about inspire your work today. But you attended Vanderbilt University, and growing up here in Nashville, none of my peers, homies, homegirls, people that grew up in the neighborhood with us, we didn't even think about Vanderbilt University.
Right.
And even as I got older and started meeting people, and black people specifically, that went to Vanderbilt, they was never from Nashville.
Right.
And so how did that happen for you, and how was that experience at Vanderbilt being a Nashville native with your upbringing?
That's a great question, because when I was growing up, Vanderbilt used to have their football program on Sunday, the day after their game, and then the University of Tennessee would have their program on. And me and my brothers used to sit up and laugh at the Vanderbilt coach because he was always seeming like he was getting ready to cry because they had gotten the crap beat out of them. So I'm sitting there like, I'll never go to Vanderbilt. That school is awful. And then, first of all, I didn't think I was going to be an athlete. I mean, I didn't grow into my own until the 11th grade. I just had this growth spurt, and all of a sudden became a 3-sport athlete, basketball, football, and track, recruited in all 3.
Wow.
And so it was at that point that I knew I was going to major in art. But Coach John Merritt, the legendary Big John from Tennessee State University, he came to recruit me, and he said, if you want to go pro, you need to come to Tennessee State University. And so I had grown up, my dad taking me to TSU games, watching Too Tall Jones and Joe Gillum and Eldridge Dickey and Nolan Smith and Claude Humphrey and all those greats. And so you would have thought that was the place that I was going to go. But later on, when I was playing football at East High School, Vanderbilt coaches came to see one of my teammates, and I had a breakout practice that day. So they ended up talking to both of us. And in 1974, Vanderbilt had Bill Parcells as the defensive coordinator, the Hall of Fame NFL coach who won 2 Super Bowls, and Steve Sloan as the head coach. And so they seemed to have a different attitude and approach about how they were going to run the program at Vandy. And that ended up being very appealing, not only to me, but a lot of other athletes, because in my freshman class, there were 10 black athletes that were recruited.
Wow.
And it made news headlines. It said, Vandy signs 10 blacks.
Right.
And so we had guys like Dennis Harrison from Murfreesboro, who went on to play with the Philadelphia Eagles, Brenard Wilson as well, just super talented players. David Culley, who was the coach at the Houston Texans, was a quarterback on the team. And so it seemed to be a different environment at Vandy than what we had typically known. So I was attracted to that. But years later, I got injured my second year. And before I went to college, my mom said, people are saying you're going to go pro, but never neglect your art. So I had that in my ear. Second year in college, I got hurt and just focused on my art. But when I graduated, I went to work for Vanderbilt food service. I was a supervisor in the nutrition services department. So we prepared patient meals and took them up to the patient floor. So one day there was a call down to the kitchen, and one of the nutrition services individuals said, Mr. Threalkill, there's a patient on his floor that's unsatisfied with his meal, and his name is Mr. Merritt. I said, what's his first name? She said, John Merritt. I said, okay, I'll go up here and take care of that. As soon as I walked in the door, Big John Merritt laying up in the bed, saw me walk in the door. He said, James Threalkill, if you had listened to me, you'd be playing in the NFL right now rather than coming up here having to see about my breakfast. I said, boy, Coach Merritt, I said, I can't say nothing to that. But you would have thought that as bad as I wanted to play pro ball, that TSU would have been the place to go because of their reputation for sending players to the pros, you know.
Right.
But by then I had so many choices: Indiana University, Notre Dame, Arizona State. So I was kind of wanting to play locally so my family could see me play. And so when I was on campus at Vanderbilt, it wasn't a lot of black students there, and you could sense the apprehension of having black students on campus. And so we're considered the pioneers now because players from the 60s and 70s are the ones who kind of paved the way for the way things are for players who are there now. So we take some pride in having gone through that scenario.
Right.
And Vanderbilt has an excellent athletic director in Candace Lee, who's really trying to move the university forward in a phenomenal kind of way. So a lot of those players are being invited back to campus to just try to let the university show them some appreciation for their trailblazing and that kind of thing.
All right, now you know made it through Vandy, you know, you serving food. When did you start taking art serious and really getting in your bag? Well, this is the career that I want to do. What was that journey like? And when did that set in mentally for you?
Absolutely. Well, at the time, Nashville was probably not the best place to try to be a full-time artist because at that point, the city was what we considered really slow in terms of trying to pursue an art career. So when I finished school, I moved away to Chicago, had an uncle up there, and trying to get in a bigger environment for an artist.
Right.
And so I had an aunt, Aunt Corrine, who knew the art director at Ebony Jet magazine. And so she arranged for me to have an interview there. So I'm up there in Chicago. My portfolio was probably about that big. I'm getting on the city bus, bumping people upside the head and that kind of. They probably like, who is this country bumpkin up here in this big city? So I finally made it to Ebony Jet's office. And so when I got in with the art director, Mr. Herbert Temple, he flipped through about 4 or 5 of my images. And then he asked the question, why are all your images black? And so I'm like, wait a minute, isn't this Ebony Jet magazine? That's the last question I expected to be asked. Right. But I tried to give some profound answer like, well, I'm proud of my people and I'm trying to show that appreciate. He said, look, son, he said, you're too talented to limit yourself in the types of images that you create. He said, it's fine to paint this type of stuff, but what if somebody wants an abstract? What if somebody wants a landscape or a bowl of fruit? You got to show that you can paint all of that. And so instead of saying, oh, man, you don't know what you're talking about, man, I said, sir, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. And it totally changed my approach to the types of images that I created. I continued to paint, primarily African-American themes, but I also showed that I could paint other things. Right. And so in 1966, my mom's mother passed, and we had the funeral, and afterwards, everybody was around the house, and I got a cousin who's from Alabama. My mom is from Tuscaloosa. But my cousin Shedrick was an artist. And so he heard that I liked to draw, so he said, man, bring me a pencil and a piece of paper. And so I had another uncle that was asleep on the sofa, and he sat there and sketched my uncle sleeping. And then he did this shading on it that just made it look three-dimensional. And he said, when you draw something, he said, turn your pencil sideways and start shading in and learn how to look at objects and see light and dark and values. And so after he showed me that, he said, go upstairs and look in the mirror and draw yourself. Man, when I did that and applied what he told me, it changed my technique significantly.
Wow.
That was one of the most valuable art lessons that I could have ever gotten from a cousin who was in town. And so
For a funeral.
Yeah, for a funeral. He
Wow.
just thought enough of me to, share that lesson with me. And so by that time, I knew that I had a strong interest in art. But because it wasn't an art conducive city that I was living in, I started just working different jobs and doing my art on the side. I was never going to take a job and not do any art whatsoever. So I ended up, working at a community center in the Edge Hill community where I grew up. And I was working for the Metro Parks and Recreation's art department. They have an awesome art department. A lot of people don't know that. But I was working for the Centennial Art Center. And my job was to go back to the communities I grew up in and set up art classes and teach the students in the neighborhood. And so while I was working at the Edge Hill Center, I met some super talented kids. And we started writing grants for programs. And me and those students won an Emmy Award for a mural that we did for a talk show program.
Wow.
This guy said, I don't want table and chairs and flowers. I want a backdrop similar to what Symphony did here. And we did a mural depicting positive and negative life in Nashville, and it won an Emmy Award. It was really exciting. But what that did, it showed those kids in that community that you can use your skills to learn how to work towards success, because there was some negative activity in the neighborhood, of course, but through those lessons and classes that we had, and I was the community services director and the art director, took those kids to Washington, D.C., on a 15-passenger van. They got to see their history books come to life. I'll never forget the looks on their faces when we drove into D.C. and they saw the Washington Monument and the White House. And so those kind of profound experiences have a lot of those kids who are doing very well in this day and time who can't come up to me still to this day and say, man, you sure changed my perspective on what I was going to do with my life. And so from there, I went to work in the mayor's office when Phil Bredesen was mayor.
Okay.
And so I was his community affairs and arts liaison. And during that time, Nashville, 2nd Avenue was a ghost town, And so through his efforts, he said that Nashville needs to attract professional sports. They need to attract things that will attract people to Nashville. So he, revitalized 2nd Avenue, got the Predators and the Titans to come to town, and Nashville was on its way to what's now known as the It City. But he was a visionary who saw the potential that Nashville had, and so it was an honor to work with him in bringing about a lot of those changes. And so from there, I went to teach art for a couple of years at MBA Montgomery Bell Academy, and then I went to work for a construction company as their global diversity director. So my job was to find women in minority businesses to do some of the contracting work on the various construction projects. And so we built things like the New York Giants and Jet Stadium, and I was able to work with some individuals who achieved like $300 million in minority businesses on that on that project. And so I was traveling around the world actually to do diversity training and recruiting and different things like that. Still doing my art.
Yeah, I'm gonna say how you.
And a lot of people were like, when they saw my art, they're like, "What are you working here for? And you can paint like that."
Right, exactly.
But the goal was to one day move toward doing art full time. And so, to your question about when did I start taking art seriously, I think when my mom helped me understand how important it was, I was serious about it. I just didn't realize where it would go.
Right.
Because of a lot of people have that concept of the starving artist. It's like a lot of parents discourage their children from being artists. It's like, you don't be no artist, you'll be a starving artist.
Right.
And so I always had that seriousness instilled in me by my mother. And so I was just continuing to nurture my art and to do art shows and different things like that. And then 5 years ago, took that leap of faith, man, to just start pursuing it full time.
5 years ago.
Full time.
That's not many years
No,
ago.
because see, you get comfortable with that check,
Right.
with that regular check. And so people would say, why aren't you doing this full time? But, art is sporadic sometimes in
Right.
terms of the sales. So I had to get that confidence that I could get out there and really.
I'm glad you hit that
Mm-hmm.
because I think many entrepreneurs have to face that they have to face that in the mirror.
Right,
They know what they want to do.
right.
They know they have the gift, the talent, but the financial piece is, unwavering.
It is, yeah.
And you have to either jump out the window and hope the parachute
Right, exactly.
opens up,
Right.
or hope you fly,
Right,
or
exactly.
you grow wings,
Yes.
or you take maybe a longer path and just chip out away at it piece by
Right,
piece,
right.
And circumstances are different. Some people have families, kids, and so some risks have to be more calculated,
Right,
than
right.
others. But what advice, before I get a little deeper, what advice would you give that artist that is being kind of hesitant,
Yeah.
that was in the same position you was in, 5+ years ago,
Right.
And you ultimately had to, make a decision? What would you tell that artist today?
The first thing I would tell them is to continue to produce work, because you always hear about when opportunity meets preparation. Continue to produce your work, first of all, so that when that opportunity does come your way and someone shows an interest in your work, you got enough work to demonstrate that you're a working artist. Don't pull out some, I sketched this in 2002 and I'm an artist. I'm like, okay, yeah, but are you serious about it?
Right.
That's the first thing. And then the other thing is you have to get out and network. You have to go to art shows and meet people, make gallery owners aware of your work, meet other artists, And the thing that changed for us in Nashville is that a lot of the black artists came together and formed a coalition. And they called it Nashville In for Art, Nashville for Artists. And all of these black artists came together, checked their egos at the table, and began to network and put on group shows and different things like that. And that's how people became aware of our work. And then we had two individuals that took some prominent steps. One was a gentleman named Carlton Wilkerson, who opened up a black-owned gallery in Nashville. And it gave black artists an opportunity to display their work.
Right.
Whereas a lot of the white galleries were not displaying black art. We now had a venue for that.
Right.
And then a gentleman who's still out on Jefferson Street now, Nate Harris, with woodcuts, took an old dairy dip and used his woodworking expertise to convert it into a frame shop. And he, too, gave artists a chance to display their work. And it made all the difference in the world. That's why I still do business with him as my framer and display my work in his gallery, because he was a key individual in the community. I think he's celebrating over 30 years now in business. But Nate Harris was a profound individual to empower local artists to have a place to show their work.
Right.
And so the networking part is really important. And then I tell artists to look at the business side of art. Figure out what you want to sell your work for, because you have to have the business side. A lot of artists tend to be shy. I don't know what I want to charge for that. I don't want nobody to see my work. I created in my studio, but I don't want nobody. You got to bring your work out there and be prepared for the positive and negative comments.
Right.
And so when you take that collective approach, then you start to get the exposure that's really important. Of course, you got to have a business card. Somebody see your work, they like it. You got to be able to hand them some information.
Right.
But you got to be passionate about being an artist. I'm working with some young artists now, and I've seen some young students that have such a zeal for art that it's just a pleasure to be able to have an impact on watching them develop that desire that they have, because the opportunities are a lot better today and in Nashville than they were when I was coming through.
Yeah, and I'll keep that thought in your mind, because I want to ask you about the new up and coming artists, and the collaboration between generations.
Oh yeah.
So I want to make sure I put it out there so neither one of us forget.
Right.
So 5 years ago, you said I'm doing this full time. Now, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, around just, playing out racial discrimination that happens in the art world. Because even myself growing up, there's not a lot of representation,
right,
in that in the art sphere. Even if you're looking at a painting that may be about a black artist, you probably don't know much about him or her. And so, take us through that journey, navigating possibly racial barriers, but also just as an artist trying to figure out all of the advice that you just gave,
right.
To the artists that are listening and watching. What was that journey like for you? And give us the good, the bad, the ugly, the in between.
Yeah.
And how you was able to find success.
Well, it was tough because, a lot of galleries were not carrying black art in their galleries and doing, solo exhibits with black artists and that type of thing. But what we did as a group of artists is just start putting on our own shows. And then by then, we had gained enough of a reputation with artists like Ted Jones and Michael McBride, Nina Lovelace, and Earl Hooks and people like that, and Greg Ridley, the godfather of black artists in this city. So they used their prominence to start nurturing the younger group of artists, and we did shows together.
Wow.
And then, a variety of people would come out to see the shows. And so when Ann Brown, who was the director of the Metro Arts Commission, white female who had worked in New York during the Harlem Renaissance, she came here and she started getting black artists to do murals in downtown Nashville, and she opened up a gallery space and started showing our work there. And so that was putting us in the heart of downtown. And so people began to see the quality of work that we were doing. But then black art started trending. Some of the biggest collectors were white collectors who were purchasing black art. And so we saw that trend change as well. Right. But we trudged along for years knowing that we were not getting the same consideration as some of our white counterparts. And then a lot of times they would go outside of Nashville to look for artists to do projects here locally. Right. But I have to credit the Tennessee Arts Commission and the Metro Arts Commission for starting to take grant funding and invest it in some of the local communities, and giving artists an opportunity to work with organizations and students and different things like that. And so we got exposure through the work that we were doing through those grant programs, because we had to report on some of the things that we were doing. So Nashville decided to just start to be more sophisticated in providing opportunities for a lot of the artists. And so I was able to be on the Arts Commission and the Tennessee Arts Commission, so I could have some influence on where grant funding went and that type of thing. And so we looked at some of the diverse communities who had art programs and could benefit from working with students in that particular regard. But, the thing that we were committed to doing is reaching back to these younger artists and helping them to understand how important it was to be serious about your art and to be business-minded about it. And so now you have individuals like the North Collective, those dynamic brothers with Slim and Huskies, who opened Inca Gallery over there with Evan, and just giving great exhibit opportunities. You got guys like Dojo. And Woke 3, Lakeisha Moore. It's some super dynamic young artists who have that community-minded approach to artists. Right. And they give the older artists like myself and others tremendous respect, but they are open to learning from us and collaborating. So we've done, I have to give Tennessee State University, the Avon Williams campus, Ms. Radcliffe, who was the head librarian down there, she started showing work of artists, and guys like Michael Mucker and a lot of other artists got an opportunity to display their work, and we would all come out and support each other. And so
That's amazing.
it's a wonderful community of artists who we have mutual respect for each other, and it's just a lot different from when I was first coming through.
Educationally, art and art programs, performing arts, all various types of arts are usually the first things cut from budgets in public schools. Being a person that's rooted in community, being a person that, was in the housing projects and starting art programs, trying to get youth into art and seeing that that's something they wanted to pursue, at least be introduced to it.
Right.
What do you see your role is or can be when there seems to be a push to remove things like art from schools and not giving kids the resources that the schools could provide, and also the introduction to potentially polish their gift that they have.
Right.
That now, it's being taken away from them to learn because everybody doesn't have the resources to go buy frames and canvases and paintbrushes and paint, spray paint, whatever type of it's multimedia type of art.
Right.
There's a lot of different type of arts, but now they can't possibly, or their parents can't possibly afford on their own, and now they can't get those resources in school either. What do you see your role in making sure there's space, there's opportunity within community here in Nashville for those students to be able to exercise their gift?
Great question. First of all, I don't understand it. Why, when funding issues come into play, the art classes are the first thing that you want to cut, when art impacts every other facet of a student's life. Art can affect your creative approach to doing math, English, science, and any other thing. So you would think that would be the last thing that you would cut because of that creative component. But I go into the schools and I take my artwork and talk to administrators about my journey as an artist and the importance of nurturing that creative spirit in young people, And so giving students a chance to see a working artist come into their school, whether it's during a career day or a special invitation to come in and talk to students about, my journey as an artist, how I turned it into a business, how to market yourself, and that if you are serious about a creative person, you can be an interior designer, you can be an architect, you can be a consultant. There are so many associated careers associated with the creative career field. And that's, I think, what administrators are missing out on in terms of thinking that art is just some little random selective that you toss a kid into when there's an entire industry that's out there, especially when you look at animation and how digital, that's just becoming almost the go-to way of doing a children's movie in this day and time, and the things that have been done with movies like Toy Story and Soul and different things like that. So it's almost like people have to be re-educated on the importance of creative development and how that creates a whole person in terms of their abilities. And so I just try to, take that message to, administrators and principals that I know and teachers and others who can have an impact on it. And then I think also when you talk to legislators about the importance of, being considerate of funding for creative programs and not letting that be the first thing on the chopping block. But collectively, artists are really good about wanting to, try to share their expertise with young people and fledgling artists to give them a chance to understand that you have to work hard at it. It's not going to be, an easy situation. You have to work hard, but when you do, it can pay off in the way that it has for artists like Kehinde Wiley and the artist that did Michelle Obama's portrait and, different artists like that. There's a fabulous artist named Bisa Butler who's doing some quilting work, man, and I'll show you some of it. She is phenomenal. And so black artists are continuing to set trends in terms of what's going on in the art world. And then even looking at an artist like Jean-Michel Basquiat, with his journey as an artist, and now his paintings are selling for like $140 million.
Right.
So it's just a different environment for Black artists to thrive.
Right.
And if you're willing to put the work in, then you have a very good chance of making a career out of it, because I paint literally every day. And unless I'm working on a special project for someone, I'm continuing to build my collection so that when an exhibit opportunity comes up, I'm ready to go.
Right. I want to pivot back on two things. Well, really one thing, then move forward on another thing. Because you bring up that starving artist kind of mentality that kind of scares people.
Right.
Really want to dig into it. So I got to ask you this. What would you say was your like lowest moment where you was like, you was talking to yourself, James, I don't know.
Right.
Rent is coming up and
Right.
I need food and, things are not going the way that I foreseen them. And how did you power through that?
Yeah. Well, faith is a big part of it. You just have to have faith and confidence in yourself. But you go through those periods where nobody's just buying the work,
What is that? What is that? Take us through it. What is that?
Man,
what does that look? What did that look like for you?
This is what I was doing. I was traveling around regionally, like going to the Essence Art Festival, going to art festivals in Savannah, Georgia, and Atlanta. And there were tremendous travel expenses associated with it. You had to pay booth fees that ranged from $500 to $2,000. Travel down to the Essence Festival, set up my $2,000 booth, and then by the time the festival is over with, you maybe have sold something for like $300 to $500 when you've had almost $3,000 in travel expenses.
Wow.
So when you do something like that, you're like, man, okay, what's next? Then you go to another art show, same situation, packing up with nothing selling. And so it's easy to get frustrated and give up, but I have confidence in the quality of my work. And I said, since I'm committed to it, I'm going to keep doing it. Now, fortunately, some shows started happening here locally, and I didn't have to travel so much. But again, even if I had to do substitute teaching with metro schools or what have you, I've been real diligent about, figuring out how to keep the lights on while waiting for that moment to get the kind of success in art that I'm now having. And so I'm glad I didn't give up where a lot of people could have easily said, I'm done with this, But I was raised with a grandfather, man, Wanzel Pruitt, who had a work ethic out of this world, and he used to take me and my brother out to Belle Meade to do landscaping at them homes out there. And he didn't have a lot of education, but he didn't take any disrespect. They called him Mr. Pruitt, and he didn't allow anybody to disrespect him, but he did quality work. And man, we'd be sleeping on Saturday mornings thinking we're going to get up and watch cartoons, and granddad knock on the door like, let's go, here we go. But I was able to observe someone who had a work ethic out of this world, the same with my parents. And so I go into those situations knowing that difficult times may come, but you have to persevere through them.
What was at this point, what has been your highest moment that you've appreciated and said, yeah, I did this.
Yeah.
This is, it might not be the mass majority's favorite moment, but your own personal, this is the moment at this particular time right now that I've appreciated the most in my career. That's
an excellent question. One would, of course, be the Emmy that I won with the kids from the Edge Hill community, a neighborhood I grew up in. But in 1995, Warner Brothers Records, who was headed by a gentleman named Jim Ed Norman, was working with a producer, Gail Hamilton, who had managed Take Six.
Okay.
They were going to do a project where South African and American musicians were going to come together to sing songs to celebrate the end of apartheid and President Mandela becoming president. So when Mandela was released, the USA Today did a photo of him holding his fist up when he was released from prison. So I painted it in 1990. 5 years later, Gail invites me to go to South Africa because she wants me to do a mural project because she heard about the program that I had at Edge Hill. But they also wanted me to do the album cover art for the musical project. And so while over there, I stayed a month driving back and forth between Soweto and Johannesburg, and went to this great junior college in Soweto where I was working with all these African students, man. And we did this incredible mural. But one of the musicians that Gail was working with was a renowned bassist named Victor Masando. And so it just so happened that they were having a concert where Mandela was coming back to Soweto for the first time since being released. And so because Victor was a prominent musician, we were able to sit on stage.
Wow.
Mandela was on the front row. I was 5 rows back from Nelson Mandela. And this was before digital. So I took my little box camera and I'm clicking all these pictures of Mandela. And so
Your Kodak.
Right. And so a chair opened up behind Mandela, and Ray Peary, the musician who worked with Paul Simon on the Graceland Project, didn't get no credit for it, did most of the work. He said, go up and show Mandela the photo of the painting you did of him. So I went and sat behind President Mandela and tapped him on the shoulder. He turned around, didn't say a word, did that, and turned back around. I said, oh, my God.
I
went back to my street. I said, I come all the way over here and insulted the president of the country. So when the band stopped playing, he turned around to these 2 bodyguards twice my size and whispered something, and they started looking back in the crowd. And then they pointed at me and started coming back at me. I said, guys, it's probably over with. Y'all heard about the South Africa necktie. I think I'm finna get it. So they came and said, the president will see you now. I went back up there, sat in that seat. President Mandela turned around and said, it would have been rude to talk while the band was playing. So now that they're taking a break, I will talk with you. I told them that me and Gail had come over there to do this art project, and we were going to donate it to the church where he first started having freedom meetings with Steve Biko and those individuals. And he thanked us for being there.
Wow.
And I actually got a chance to sit and have a conversation with Nelson Mandela.
What?
One of the most phenomenal individuals in the history of mankind.
Wow.
But funny story, Ray Peary came up and he said, well, bring your friend up. I called Gail up, and then Ray came up and said, James, give me your camera. Let me take a picture of you and Mandela and Gail. I said, man, I shot all my film up back when I was sitting back there. He said, you dummy.
Hey,
but,
wish you would have had those smartphones.
Right, I could have just deleted some shots and took it. But it is indelibly indexed up here. But being able to meet him, and the thing about it, he treated everyone from royalty to the servants in a household the same, man. He was such a dignified individual. So when you talk about, like you said, a guy from North Nashville, here's a kid from J.C. Napier Court, all the way over in South Africa talking to Nelson the president of the country.
Wow.
And I'll never forget it.
Man, we should have started off with that.
right.
And that's the title right there.
Man,
I talked to Nelson Mandela.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it was a phenomenal moment.
Where do you see, Nashville, it city, some say it city.
Right.
Where do you see Nashville moving in the arts world now? And what, because we growing.
Yeah.
And people are coming from all of these major cities that have bigger art kind of worlds than we do at the moment. Where do you see Nashville moving, going in that art direction as we grow, and the opportunities that will be available for artists here? Always used to be it used to be a time to where, like you said, you had to leave. Right. And that's just not with just art. That was many things because you just, it was a big town, but we wasn't a major city.
Exactly.
And now we're a major city. And, it's to the point now you shouldn't have to leave.
That's right. Absolutely.
The market is here. We are the market.
That's right.
In many spectrums. So what does that look like? And then how does that impact what you do in your work? Yeah.
Well, first of all, it is moving forward in a very prominent kind of way. And so in the same way that we talk about supporting businesses in our community, our patrons have to support us in our community. Right. You should have Omari Booker's or Dojo's artwork in your home or establishment. It begins there. But a lot of the prominent galleries are now showing more consideration of diverse artists being, shown at their galleries.
Right.
Herb Williams, a phenomenal artist who works with the Crayola crayons to create images, is showing diverse artists at his gallery, along with Chauvet Art Gallery downtown, who have a good collection of artists. And then, of course, Woodcuts has been doing it for years and still going strong. And so galleries have to open their doors and give more artists an opportunity for exhibit opportunities. And then the promotion is important. Nashville needs to promote the talent that it has here locally so that when you're looking at doing public art, you don't go away looking for somebody when you can go get Michael McBride and have him do the John Lewis mural that's downtown now. And so it just has to be that consideration, because the artists are ready to do the work. Their excellence and all of that is in place. They just need the opportunity to demonstrate what they can do. And we see more of that happening. Woke 3 just did a wonderful mural over at the soccer stadium.
Nashville Soccer Club, yep.
And so if we as a city will continue to be considerate of diverse opportunities, which is the kind of work I did for 20 years for the construction industry, then we will be a genuine it city, rather one that leaves out certain segments of the community. And, you have to look for Latino artists and other artists of different communities to give them an opportunity as well. But I think that the strength of where we are now goes back to people like Greg Ridley, who taught at TSU, and Earl Hooks and Ted Jones and Nina Lovelace and all of these pioneer artists who, grabbed us by the ear and say, listen here, boy, if you're serious about this, this is what you need to do.
And this is kind of like my closing question. And I wanted to say this for last because I think it's important. In the times that we are in right now, socially, what role should art play and is playing around social justice?
Absolutely. Great question. Art is playing a significant role because what we are able to do is help communicate messages in a profound way. When we're doing art shows at prominent galleries, I mean, me and a group of artists just did a show at the African American Museum of Music, and you see representation of artists like Marvin Gaye, who had that phenomenal album in '72, What's Going On, and just showing how art and protest came together to have a profound impact on society. A lot of my imagery, you will see, people with their hands up with the I Am a Man sign on them, and showing marches and other types of things. So we as artists can help promote the message of how important social justice is. And a lot of times, even when you see protesters out in the street, there's artwork on those signs that they've created. So I think that we have a responsibility to be part of promoting fairness and social justice through our imagery, because that captures people's attention in a certain type of way. And then to continue to advocate through the venues that we're associated with that a lot of times overlap other areas of society, like politics and other areas where we can be a voice, you know. And so, they are precarious times where it's almost like society is trying to go back to a day long ago when, injustice was running amok. And hopefully enough people will come together with a like-minded attitude toward embracing people rather than hatred and all the other negative stuff that we see out there.
I want to give you the last word to tell us about anything that's coming up, any other profound messages or message that you want to give, inspiring artists that are still going today. And then, we would love to know, I say we because I'm pretty sure everybody want to know, who are some of your favorite artists here in Nashville that people should, go support, give them a follow, or just keep their eye on?
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of.
And I know you're going to, so look,
Right.
he probably going to leave some people out.
Right, right,
Let's go ahead and
right.
put that out there. But
Yeah.
just give us a handful of names and, or places where we can go find folks.
Right. Right.
To support and keep their eye on that's here, that's homegrown, especially if they homegrown.
Yeah.
Here in Nashville.
Right. Well, Inca Gallery,
Okay.
next to Slim and Huskies, does an excellent job of promoting up and coming artists as well as established artists. You've got artists like Michael Mucker, man, that's doing some killer stuff with airbrush and other types of work where his images have really profound meaning.
Right.
Samuel Dunson, who is an art instructor at Tennessee State University, man, one of the baddest painters out there. And again, his imagery always has real powerful messages associated with it. And Sam does exhibits on occasion at Inca and other places like that. But very strong artist, man.
Shout out to Symphony Henderson, who did
Absolutely
the work here. Shout out to Sim. Shout out to
Symphony
him.
is the bomb, man. I'm telling you, super talented.
Yeah.
So, you got artists like Lakeisha Moore. You have
You said Woke.
yeah, Woke is
You
a
said
beast.
Dojo.
Right.
He a beast.
Serious, man.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, doing some outstanding work. And so, and then you have artists like Barbara and Leroy Hodges who are doing some of the folk art that's really some brilliant type of work that, again, has the social justice messages associated with it. And
Right.
so we've got a strong community of artists, and they all are continuing to work hard to try to just get that excellence out there.
Right.
But the thing I would say more than anything is for parents and guardians to pay attention to the children that are showing an interest in it,
Right.
and helping them to understand how important a skill it is. Because a lot of times, if they're not made to understand how important it is, they'll think it's just some kind of anomaly,
Right.
and not take it as serious as they should.
Right.
And you can miss out on some really talented individuals who could go on to some profound careers in the arts.
James, how can people find your art? Contact you if they want to get some commission, or reach out to have an even deeper conversation, about the art world and your journey, and just get to know you.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, let me say I appreciate you having me. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here and converse with you today. But you can email me at Threal, Threal 89 @gmail.com. And then I'm on Instagram at James Threalkill Arts, as well as a Facebook page at James Threalkill Arts. Okay. So those are probably the best ways to reach me. You can message me or what have you. But happy to discuss anybody's art needs, and look forward to continuing this wonderful legacy of creative energy that's a long legacy in our community, going back to the Harlem Renaissance and even before then with artists like Henry O. Tanner and others. So I'm just proud to be part of that collective of individuals who years from now, people will look back at our work to see what society's conditions were like. So we have a responsibility to promote positive images and messages.
And I lied to you. I got one more question. What do you want your legacy to be? Once you put the paintbrush down, put the canvases down, stop getting the frame. What do you see that for yourself? Your legacy?
Yeah, great question. I would want it to be where I have a body of work that continues to inspire people, to uplift, and to empower people through the imagery that I choose to create. I do a lot of images of Black women and the beauty of their natural hair.
The Oprah piece was hard.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it. So just imagery that inspires and uplifts, so that people can see that I was serious about, the skill that God blessed me with, and that I was diligent about continuing to try to create images that show the pride that we have in our heritage and our community.
Well, James, again, I appreciate your time, appreciate your work, giving you your flowers while you can smell them again. And I look forward to talking to you more.
Absolutely.
More occasions in studio, out of studio. And I'm gonna put this in the universe right now. I already told Symphony, so I'm gonna tell you. Once Deep Dish Conversations has a building, you know, in the next year or two.
Absolutely. Speak it, man.
2 years.
Yes, sir.
Max.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want you to bless the building with some of your art.
Absolutely.
Know? And, you know, and we paying. You know, we
right.
we gonna support.
Right.
But
absolutely.
I definitely want you to bless, you know, your gift that you have and carry around, you know, into the building, into the space.
It would be an honor.
James,
pleasure meeting you, brother. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Shout out to Molly for
absolutely.
And,
Thank you.
Until next time.
All right.